Hi, Rex here at RW Mods. It's been a little while since I've done a engine video. Today we're going to look at this Alpha 28. It's a T850.28. It's a racing engine. Quite a bit different than the Argus Alpha the RTR replacements that I've done in the past. This is a customer's. This is the second one that I've modified for him. He does drag racing. Not sure. I know some guys do like scale quarter mile. Some guys do like 200 foot or or longer distances too. I'm not sure quite what he's doing with this one, but he gave me some feedback on the last mod, and we'll look at the insides of this one. Yeah, it's been a little bit since I did a video. I got another engine on the way. Probably the most expensive engine I've ever reviewed is being sent this week, so in the next week or week and a half I should be doing a review on that one too. This is the standard Alpha packaging. Nice box. 0.28 T850. I'm not sure how they get that T850 label, but I think they had a F850 on the 21s. So we got an owner's manual here. I didn't read through it at all. Parts diagrams and some different things in there. The engine did come in cellophane wrapping, so it was kind of sealed up here. 2 restrictors. So we got a 6.5 and a 7 extra restrictor, extra head shim. Here's the engine. These have been pretty much unchanged, I don't know, for several years, probably 10 years. It's been a long time that these have seen a change at all, but they're pretty good engine, I think, as far as quality and stuff. So really no need to change over the past few years. Kind of the standard Alpha head design. Always a pretty good head design. This has their old reliable carburetor. Pretty good carburetor. This one does look like, usually on these carbs you're just in from flush on the high speed needle, and then on this, your low speed, you want the needle about flush with that chamfer that's there. This one's a little in from that. You usually end up with 0.7 idle gap with this low speed needle about out from where it is right there, maybe just about even with the inside of that bevel. I don't know if you understand me correctly, but not on the outside of the bevel, but right where the bevel ends there. That's usually a good starting point for the carb on these. These I found this for sale for $220. This is a turbo plug, so it's a race engine. 18.35 bore, 17.6 stroke, and we'll get into my feelings on the inside of this thing. It's based on the standard Alpha 21s. I used to run them. My son ran the Alpha and the Dynamite XPE version that was really close to this. So similar, casting, head, carb, everything pretty much the same. This one's just got a bigger bore for the for being a 28, but pretty tried and true stuff. Okay, we have everything apart here. It's pretty nice. They've always been a pretty nice block. Never had any problems with cracking anything on these. Ran quite a few different versions myself. Like I said, this engine is similar to the 21s that that have been out for years. I mean, over 10 years, I think. These were the Alphas were a pretty hot engine back when engines weren't very, they were pretty expensive, and this was I think they sold around $210. This one I had seen for $220. It's yeah, when engines were 300 or more, this was a good option. The 21s, and they really performed well too. Ran just as good as the expensive ones. I think that Alpha and Argus are kind of missing the boat a little bit, because for their race 21 engines they went to a higher end engines. You know, I've done some reviews on the Argus. I guess I did the Alpha Dragon 4 also, and they went to like the $300 range, and it's nice that some of them come pre-broken in and stuff. But I think, you know, right now without Novorossi being a budget engine, these, you know, if they had a race 21, you know, it'd be similar spec to this, just a smaller bore and stroke and stuff. But in the 200, you know, $180 to $200 mark, the way they perform and stuff, I think they would be selling way more than what they are of their race 21s. That's just my opinion. They were good running engines for the $200 mark, you know. So I tried talking to Argus too. Hey, can you make, you know, some of the older engines, or some of the, you know, the other versions with the standard carb that this one has, uncoated crank, just basically go back to basics. If we could sell something, you know, sub 200, but they didn't really want to. And they had told me in the past that, you know, higher price means higher quality, and I don't know. I had good luck with these engines in the past. So this is the T850 28. Not really sure what its intention. I think it's, you know, it's a truggy race engine, but probably more in the bashers are going to be putting these in monster trucks, or, you know, this one's for drag racing and such. There really isn't. I've raced enough that there really isn't a need for a 28 in a truggy for racing. The race 21 engines have plenty of power. This one's going to be a little more thirsty in fuel. You're going to have to pit. I don't know if you could go 7.5 minutes with one of these in a race, you know, with a good driver in a race situation. But so if you get one more pit stop, it's probably, you know, you got good power here off the corner. You're probably going to be spinning the tires and such. So maybe in a muddy track or something where they really need that rip on the bottom and stuff. But most race 21s, plenty of power for the truggy. So I don't recommend 28s. You know, they do actually make a 23. That was a good truggy engine. Pretty good mileage. You could get to 7.5 minutes with that. A little more oomph on the bottom and stuff. But so the block and carb here, this carb is pretty good. Let's take it off here. I was going to look and see if I don't think they changed the low speed needle at all here either. So we got, it's a long low speed needle that's kind of similar to what they've had for quite a few years. Pretty good carb. I like the way these tune. I have seen some they won't leak fuel, but on the two washers on the other side, this is the banjo, the brass banjo fitting. I have seen a friend of mine actually was blowing off his car, cleaning his car, and he could see some bubbles in the fuel line when he blew an air hose near here, and we found out that it was leaking a little bit. It was sucking a little bit of air in, just between the aluminum washer and the brass here. All I did, and I'll probably do it to this one too, is I basically just take this apart and stone each side on a machinist stone each side of that brass fitting. You could do it with a precision file maybe or something, or even some light emery cloth on some piece of glass or something, or flat metal or something. But just to kind of flatten each side of that brass nipple fitting. So otherwise, I really like these carbs. Kind of based on an older Nova Rossi carb and stuff. So the crank, these are always a pretty good crank. They're not drilled and filled. This is more basic, but nice machining and grinding on these. I did have kind of a rough grind finish on some, but this one feels really good. This is a few years ago. I used to kind of polish that up a little bit, but no chrome plating or anything on this one. This one's just heat treated and ground. These cranks on these Alpha and Argus, they're pretty good. They aren't quite as hard as some of the Italian engines, so you'll get a little bit, maybe, you know, at 5 gallons you might see, you know, a thousandths wear. With the Nova Rossi you might see a half thousandths wear, you know, you know, so they wear slightly quicker than a good Italian engine, but it's not bad. The worst cranks are the uncoated OS cranks as far as softness. These are quite a bit harder than the uncoated OS. So these are good middle of the line cranks. Pretty decent quality, I think. The piston, this one does have some bypass ports in it. We do not have a bypass port in the sleeve, so basically what that does is, let's line it up here. As the piston comes down, it lets a little air out from underneath the piston as it's coming down. And then sometimes an engine will have a bypass port in the sleeve here too, where that kind of continues, so the air keeps coming out from underneath the piston through the stroke. But this one's just in the piston. I do like it because it does lighten up the piston a little bit. It's a 5-port sleeve. Nice wide exhaust port. It's a pretty standard looking Alpha sleeve. Obviously a little bit bigger with this bore. So one thing, I've never ran this engine myself, pushed it hard or anything, but I do know, like, an Alpha rod is not quite as strong as let's say a good Italian engine. They did have, I think, a lot of the Lutz engines, the original pink one, they had some problems with some broken rods. I never personally broke rods myself on these, but a lot of times you get, you know, 5-7 gallons in, and you got a little bit of crank wear and you got a little bit of rod wear, and you get that slop, you know, you get some slop in there, so then that's harder on stuff too, and eventually the rod breaks, just from being hammered up and down. But one thing I do kind of worry about this is, you know, this 28 piston's quite a bit bigger, and I say that with some of the other brands too, is you got a bigger, heavier piston, you got basically the same construction on the rod. I believe these are actually the same rod, the 29.5 millimeter center to center, as the 21s have. And so I worry about, you know, a lot of RPM with one of these, with that extra weight of the piston going up and down, that inertia breaking the rod. Plus you're making a little more power too. You got a little more power, you got a bigger bore there, you're making more power too, which is also harder on the rod. So these engines run great, but I do kind of worry about if they're pushed really hard in a situation where the rod would break. Now, this customer here sent me one here a few months ago to modify, and he's ran it several times. I don't know how much fuel he has through it and stuff, but he didn't say the rod broke or anything, so he's happy with the engine. So maybe I'm wrong, but I just kind of worry about, you know, all brands' engines. I would like to see a beefier rod than their 21s would have on their bigger engines. And Nova Rossi on some of theirs, the 25 and 28s, actually had a little bit bigger crank pin diameter, and then I think a little beefier rod too, you know, in their 25s and 28s and stuff. So That's just something that I kind of personally just worry about. So, just something. I mean, I see guys on YouTube and stuff running, whatever engine they're running, but they're running wide open for 10, 15 seconds, and that, I don't care what engine you run, unless you got an on-road engine in there, that's not really what they're made for. They're not made for going wide open for long periods of time. So, especially if you get them lean and just run a little RPM, you're asking for trouble. The backplate here, pretty basic on the Alpha engines. Looks a little different in the casting than previously I've seen, but I've always been impressed with the Alpha Argus engines on their machining. This is really, that's a nice finish to hold on there. And that's a cast piece too, so head button, same thing, really nice machining. Turbo head, like I said. This notch here, I just like to, I think it came with the notch towards the carb, but I usually put these together with the notch towards the exhaust. Novarossi, and some of them signify which end goes towards the exhaust. Nice combustion chamber shape. I do like a nice dome like that. I don't like sharp edges and stuff, so this is ideal, this combustion chamber here. I did not check the compression height of this one though. I'll have to do that before I finish the engine, but I did have trouble with the 28 Argus that I ordered. I talked to Argus about them, and I'm sure the Alpha's the same way, because they basically sell that same engine. Is the piston to head clearance on them. I got the ones I pre-ordered, and I got them. I checked the piston to head clearance, and I was only getting like 0.4 millimeters. It was like 7,000ths, or I was getting very thin. Basically, the thickness of the head gasket or the head shim was the difference. Without the head shim and the head button on there, the piston should come right to the head button. And they had one shim in there, and I emailed them, and they're like, "Oh, that's what it's supposed to be. It's supposed to have one head shim." Like, yeah, but you're not getting it. The compression height, when it's at TDC, it was like almost touching the head button, and I was trying to explain to him. I finally did a video like this of it, kind of measuring, at top dead center, put the piston at top dead center with the engine assembled, measure down, and then measure, the step here and subtract the difference, and that's what your clearance is. And they weren't getting it, and I did a video, and they said, "Oh yeah, we'll send you some head shims, but we're not going to change it." But they were looking for trouble having that much compression. It just kind of blows my mind. But guess we didn't look at the head. These have always had a pretty nice etching on the head. Nice machining, like the other parts. Pretty light head. These got some nice holes drilled in them. I've always liked the looks on these heads. Seems like they would cool well too. A lot of fins. Pretty good material on them. I don't think, once in a while you can break a fin on these, but not too often. They're pretty tough. So that's about all the internals on this. Pretty good stuff. I do like this engine. I guess the only thing I really worry about is, prolonged RPM and stuff like that with the rod. Maybe it's just me, but so like I said, this engine sells for $220. So I'm not a dealer for these at all, so I had thought about talking to someone about being a dealer, but I haven't. And so we got the Alpha T850 28. It's 18.35 bore. This is what it was advertised. 18.35 bore, 17.6 stroke. Blowdown is 37 degrees. That's not too bad Induction open is 136, induction close 57 for a total 192. Now all these numbers can be improved a little bit, especially this guy's going to be doing some drag racing, so we'll probably get this blowdown up in the 40s. Induction open probably in the 150s, probably 60 something on this induction close. You know, we're going to get closer to 215, 220 on the total induction. These numbers aren't bad though. This thing will run really good stock. With that blowdown in the 30s, it's going to have a ton of torque. Probably really good numbers for a monster truck if that's what you do. Not sure if this. I don't think this engine's available in a bump or in a roto start or a pull start though. Which I think that would be another thing that you could look at, because it's something wanting a little bit better than that RTR engine. This one would be a good. I always like tell people to use a bump box if they can, but there's some monster trucks where a wheel getting in there and stuff with the chassis, it's kind of impossible. So it'd be kind of cool if they made a pull start version of this. But and I've had people ask all the time, like, hey, can you put a pull start on this engine or that engine? And really, this one does have a hole in the pin here, but normally they have an extra nub sticking out that drives the roto start or pull start drives, and the race cranks don't come with that, so it's kind of a little bit of a pain. Maybe with a different crank you could make it work. If the crank out of the RTR, I'm not sure if it fits this, but if it did, you could do that. But kind of more pain than it's worth. There are some engines that do use a smaller pin that drives off that, but probably kind of difficult to do. I get people asking all the time, and I'm a proponent for starter boxes. So that's it on the numbers here. I think it's a good all-around engine. I think this guy using it in drag racing and stuff, it's kind of a neat application. I wish someone around here ran Nitro drag racing. I would like to either, go watch, do some videos, maybe help them a little bit, get things set up, because I think a lot of it's clutch with these. A big engine like this off the line might overpower the wheels, so then it kind of, I'm sure it's quite a game trying to get something hooked up for drag racing. So that's it. Look out in the next couple weeks for another video, kind of get back into some reviews here. So thanks for watching.